Most cruise ship cabins are made to the same design, and before I took this cruise with Disney, every cabin that I'd ever stayed in had basically the same layout. My cabin that I had on the Disney Magic had a few surprises in it that I never would have thought about before this cruise. I didn't know about most of these until I was actually on the ship. These interesting things that I noticed apply to all cabin categories on the Disney Magic and also to some other Disney ships too. I took this cruise with my mum, and on every other cruise that I've ever been on, there's two options when it comes to the beds. Usually you can choose to have a double bed or to have that bed split up into two twin beds. I didn't even think about it when I booked this cruise. I was cruising with my mum, but I've never been on a cabin before where you couldn't split the double bed into two. It was actually on one of my live streams that one of you guys told me that the beds do not split on Disney and that I would be having a surprise when I got to my room. When we came into the cabin, I saw this huge bed. It is absolutely huge. It's got to be at least a queen size bed, and it's quite high off the floor, but I didn't notice any other bed for me. Our cabin steward introduced himself to us. Usually when you embark a cruise, you'll meet the cabin steward, and he said to us that every night he would be making up the sofa bed for me, and that's where I would be sleeping during this cruise. I was a little bit apprehensive about sleeping on a sofa bed, especially considering how much this cruise cost me, but really that was my only option. I didn't want to sleep on the balcony, I didn't want to sleep in the bathroom, so I did try sleeping on the sofa bed. The sofa bed was surprisingly comfortable, and it was clearly a sofa bed that was designed to be used as a bed. It wasn't like the kind of sofa beds that you get at home that actually is only used for a bed about one weekend per year. It clearly was designed to go from a sofa to a bed to a sofa to a bed, and it did that incredibly well. The actual cabin in terms of square footage was pretty big, and what I liked was that the sofa bed just converted, but it didn't need to fold out. Sometimes on other cruise lines the sofa bed will fold out, which means that if you need to go to the bathroom in the night, you may be climbing all over everybody else. Sometimes the third or fourth bed may come down from the ceiling, and it can get quite busy. But I did like in this cabin that the sofa didn't fold out, it didn't move, it just nicely converted, and it stayed in that corner. I talk quite a lot about storage on this channel, and I think this cabin has broken my all-time record for the number of drawers in a cabin. Previously that record was held by the Marella Explorer. My inside cabin on the Marella Explorer had 16 drawers, but my cabin on the Disney Magic had even more than that. Plus it had a double wardrobe, plus loads of shelves. So much storage space. We were only cruising for 3 nights, so I pretty much could have given every item of clothing that I bought its own drawer in the cabin if I wanted to. There was so much space under the bed too. If you wanted to hide under there, you could do that without any problem. I have heard that one of the reasons that the beds don't split is so that they can make this big high bed for everybody to put their suitcases under. I've never had any problem putting my suitcase under the bed even though it splits. But it is what it is, and my sofa bed was pretty comfortable. When we had explored our main cabin, my mum went to have a look in the bathroom, and what we found in the bathroom was a really tiny little bath. If you're an adult, maybe you could have sat in this bath, you wouldn't really be able to have a proper bath in it, but that's not what it's designed for. As Disney are a family cruise line, it's pretty much a little bath for washing your young children, and I imagine for that it works very well. The shower is above the bath, which means that the height is kind of restricted. It wasn't a problem for me, but if you're over 6 foot, I don't know if you would fit in this shower. I did get some comments on my full Disney review that said that some people went to the gym to shower and that there were nicer showers there. Maybe something you could look into if you are over 6 foot. Or maybe you could sit in the bath and then have a shower at the same time. I don't know. The bath wasn't really the thing that surprised us about our cabin. When my mum was exploring the cabin, she shouted to me and said, "Emma, where is our toilet?" That is a great question, Mum, and the toilet is actually in a separate room. Both of the rooms, the main kind of bathroom and the toilet room, do have their own sinks, which I think is good, but I've never been on a cruise with that kind of layout. The closest thing I can think of is on board the Norwegian Epic, where you'll have a shower in one corner of the room and a toilet in the other, but on board the Norwegian Epic, the sink is in the main room, and I much preferred it on the Disney Magic, where there was a sink in each little room. So somebody could be brushing their teeth, somebody could be changing a nappy, somebody could be having a bath, and you could do that all at the same time, but not together. Your Britishism of the week is what we call a nappy. A nappy is what you guys in the US call a diaper. We don't use the word diaper at all here in the UK. It is a nappy. Nappy, nappy, nappy. Let me know what you would call this thing in the country where you're from. Here in the UK, it isn't actually that uncommon to have a separate room with a toilet in it versus the bathroom. I grew up in a house like that. I have loads of friends with houses like that, but normally you don't get the sink in the toilet room. Normally it's just in the main bathroom. So I did like the fact that there were 2 sinks. That was a good move, Disney. It's interesting to note the kind of old school hairdryer here in the toilet room. They do have a more modern hairdryer in the desk. I don't know why they've left this one here, but clearly they didn't think it was worth taking it down and redecorating. So technically you have got 2 hairdryers. The ship was built in the 1990s, which is quite old for a cruise ship. She has had quite a lot of refits in that time, and it didn't really feel as though things were kind of damaged or falling apart. I think certain things do give away the ship's age, like all of this wood and like the carpets, but it was perfectly clean, it was perfectly functional, and some people prefer this style. A friend of mine, Hazel, was staying in a suite and she very kindly let me and my mum have a look around her cabin. She had multiple TVs, multiple big TVs, so much space, and even a full-size dining table in her cabin. It had a really nice kind of circular layout and I was pretty envious of this cabin. It was very cool. For me, I'm usually staying in an inside cabin anyway, so having a balcony, that was a real treat. I loved how on the light switches in the cabin it said what the light switch was for. It's such a small thing, but it makes such a big difference, especially when you have 2 different bathrooms. There's no kind of control that controls the lights with a card like you'll find on a lot of modern cruise ships, and you still have to put out the piece of paper for do not disturb, which definitely shows the ship's age. Not necessarily a bad thing, but most modern cruise ships now will have just a do not disturb button. You don't normally have these kind of pieces of paper like you do in hotels anymore. Heading out onto the balcony, and we found another surprise. Technically our cabin was a cabin with a veranda. It didn't say balcony, it was veranda. I don't really know what the difference is technically between a veranda and a balcony, but it definitely felt like a balcony to me. The balcony or veranda was a really good space, and what surprised me about it was how the door opened. Usually onto the balcony you will have a big sliding door that will go from one side to the other, but we had a door in the middle of our cabin that worked like a normal door. Thinking about it, this design makes a lot of sense because usually you can't have anything in front of the door because the door needs to slide. Having the door in the middle meant that we could have the desk on one side and my sofa bed on the other, and it didn't really waste any space. Our next cabin surprise didn't come until the evening. We went to dinner, we went to a show, and when we came back, every single night, we found a towel animal and chocolates waiting for us on the bed. If you went back about 10 years, almost all cruise lines would do the towel animals, they would do the chocolates on the pillow, but that has been phased out over the last few years. I personally quite like it. I understand why cruise lines don't do it because it's quite a lot of work for the cabin steward, but it was quite nice to kind of come into this view every evening. My Disney cruise was full of surprises and the cabin was just the start. Watch this video next to find out what I thought of the ship, the entertainment, the food, and most importantly, if I thought it was worth the price that I paid.